I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. You know, all of us want to age gracefully, keeping all of our faculties, having a sound mind. And the Word of God says that He has given us a sound mind, but we face in an ever-increasing amount new reports on dementia, on Alzheimer's, on the aging brain. What if there were steps you could take, things you could do, lifestyle alterations, food choices, activity choices, even as simple as standing longer to avoid some of the early onset of dementia and Alzheimer's? Our next guest, Dr. Timothy Jennings, is the author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Brain. He has been in private practice as a Christian psychiatrist and certified master psychopharmacologist since 1997. Board certified in psychiatry by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. He is a specialist in transcranial magnetic stimulation, a drug-free treatment for depression. Dr. Jennings is a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, fellow of the Southern Psychiatric Association, and past president of both the Tennessee and Southern Psychiatric Associations. He spent more than 2 decades researching the interface between biblical principles and modern brain science, and is a highly sought-after lecturer and international speaker, and the author of The God-Shaped Brain and The God-Shaped Heart. He's in private practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can find out more at agingbrainbook.com or his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Dr. Timothy Jennings, welcome back to, I think this may be your 4th or 5th visit with us here on Revealing the Truth, and we're looking forward to you being kind of a semi-regular guest on the program in the coming months as we look forward to exploring this whole idea of the aging brain. So welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, and a very happy new year to you and to your family.
You too.
Dr. Jennings, is this a Western problem? Or
no,
is this...
It's actually not a Western problem. It's a worldwide problem. But depending on where we live and the various environmental factors, there can be different rates of dementia happening in different parts of the world. So, and when we talk about dementia, there's a variety of different types. And so I think we're primarily talking about the Alzheimer's type right now. And but it does happen to people all over the world.
So as we look at this issue of the aging brain, we statistically are looking at the fact that we are living longer. And
Yes.
the report just came out, I think, yesterday, that there was a decline in cancer deaths last year. So modern science is now able to attack some of those things that are causing the death rate to be reduced. And that means that we are going to face, as we live longer, the challenges of our brains being able to keep up with our life or our actuarial table for lifespan.
Well, no, I'm glad you brought this up, because one of the myths I've discovered that people believe is that if you live long enough, dementia is inevitable. And that's what people think. If you live long enough, you're going to get demented. That's actually a myth. Dementia is not normal aging. Dementia is pathological aging. And so people who experience dementia have experienced dementia because something has gone wrong with aging. And if we can do the right choices in life before we actually get to that stage in life, we can keep our brains healthy and age well and not experiencing dementia. So that's really if I could send one message to the listening audience, the message is dementia is not inevitable. It really is a consequence of multiple factors over decades. People will have changes happening 10, 15, 20 years before you get the symptoms of dementia. And so if you take an inventory of your life and you begin making healthy lifestyle choices, and I know this won't surprise you a bit, but choices in harmony with how God designed us to live, you're going to find out that your brain can stay healthy and you're not going to get demented.
In your study, in your research, because you are known as a Christian psychiatrist. You lead with God, you lead with prayer, you lead with your faith. You have made it known that this is your approach, that you are a believer, that you live a believer's life, that you believe in the inerrant Word of God. Is there any connection to faith and dementia?
So that's a great question. And yes, there's a connection in multiple different aspects how it's connected. Some positive and some negative, okay? And then we'll go through those. If you have the right picture of God and the right relation with God, it's always positive. But as we know, there are many false gods in the world, and you can have a relationship with a false God, and then it can actually be very detrimental to you. So one aspect of that is people who have healthy spirituality, healthy relationship with a God that they actually can trust, have less stress in life generally. And as they have less stress because they trust God with the outcomes, they walk by faith, not by sight, and so forth. And with less stress, that reduces activation of the stress cascades and circuits in our body, which over the course of our lifespan reduces not only physical health problems, but the damage to our brain that can lead to dementia. So having a healthy relationship with a benevolent God. When I say the negative side of it, what the studies show is that the healthiest worldview that has the best physical and mental health is believing in a God of love, a benevolent being whom you trust. That's the healthiest outcomes across the landscape of humanity. The next healthiest worldview, though, is believing in no God at all, but having a benevolent, compassionate, altruistic approach to treating other people. The worst worldview is believing in a God that's authoritarian and fear-inducing, who's punishing, who you're afraid of, and you live in fear of that God. That actually is quite harmful.
Interesting. Interesting. Is reading just the function of continuing to read or study the Bible or read the Bible, is that stimulating enough to keep the mind from aging?
So there are multiple things that can slow the aging process, keep our brains healthy. One of those is new learning. When we do new learning of any kind, we actually we'll turn certain genes on in our brain that keep our neurons healthy and are directly connected with reducing the risk of dementia. But that really requires new learning. So if you're doing repetitive activities like just reciting memorized Bible verses or doing crossword puzzles, or doing a Bible reading, but it's kind of just a superficial reading. It's not actually in-depth study where you're expanding your insights, comprehensions, learning new things. If you're not learning new things, just reinforcing things you've already learned, that actually doesn't have any benefit. There needs to be new expansion of our insight, new learning, new comprehensions coming along. And Bible study is a great way to do that. But it could be studying medicine, or it could be studying geophysics or something else. As long as you're expanding your learning, then that's beneficial.
So what role, if learning new things helps stimulate, then what does social construct or social encounters, small groups or group activities, or engaging in human interaction keep us vital, vibrant, and engaged?
So you're asking great questions. Next, the first thing is that we are designed for social connectivity. And so on the grand umbrella stage, the big principles, people who are socially isolated or socially disconnected have worse health, die younger, more risk of dementia than people who are socially connected as a general principle. However, beneath that umbrella of social connectivity, the quality of those social connections make a huge difference. Being connected to an abuser, or being an abuser, so the people you're connected with are victims of your abuse, beating your spouse and so forth and so on, this is not associated with health benefits. This is associated with health problems, both physical health problems, mental health problems, accelerated stress, accelerated inflammatory cascades, increasing risk of dementia. So the quality of the relationships make a difference. How about not overt abuse? How about the quality of relationships where there's just constant conflict, constant arguments, constant criticism? You feel condemned, you feel rejected. That also has a negative relationship to health. More negativity, the worse it is for your health and the higher your risk of dementia. Spiritually speaking, one of the things that's very helpful and very healing, the Bible tells us, confess our sins one to another. One of the things that happens when we have sinned in our lives, internal to ourselves, it causes a feeling of fear, guilt, and shame. That fear, guilt, and shame, if left untreated, tends to lead us towards social isolation. We're afraid if people knew us, they would reject us. We're afraid we'll be stoned. We're afraid we'll be condemned. And so that leads us then to often create social masks. So we don't open ourselves up to be genuinely connected, genuinely known. And so when we can come into a faith relationship and a group where people are mature in their faith so that they can handle the struggles of a person, and a person can come to a brother or sister in the Lord and say, hey, I've been struggling with this addiction problem, et cetera, and they can be loved for who they are as a child of God struggling and not stoned, condemned, rejected. That's very powerful, very healing, and one of the keys to how 12-step groups are so beneficial to helping people overcome their addictions.
In Scripture, God establishes that our life will be 70. We're now, of course, exceeding that. What wise counsel, Old Testament, New Testament fundamentals, have we abandoned as a society that have contributed to the increase in facilities treating dementia patients or family members who are suffering with dementia? Is it our food supply? Is it our lifestyle? What are if you take the top 5 contributing avoidable, I always want to do the avoidable,
right.
Things that are actionable. Of course, DNA must play some part. There may be some connection there, but in your book and in the study that I've done in your book, there's no predictable inevitability that I believe that you've been able to link that says it's inevitable that you are going to. My mother's 92. She reads 3 books a week. She plays golf several times a week. She is as sharp. Her physical body is changing, but her mind is as sharp as it's always been. I'm 67. I went for my Medicare physical, and he said at the beginning of the physical, I'm going to give you 3 words, and I want you to, later on, I'm going to ask you after the examination to recite back to me what those 3 words were. And so he gave me the 3 words. He did all the examination, drew the blood, did all that stuff, and finally said, what were the 3 words? And my response to him was, those are the same 3 words you asked me last year. And he said, you're right, I haven't changed the words in 5 years. I certainly will put a check mark in the fact that there is no problem with your mental acuity. You can remember what I said to you last year when you only saw me once during the year because I've lived a fairly healthy lifestyle. But as we look at things like that, what is it in our lifestyle that are preventable that we can do that are simple, not complex, not stressful, but simple ways to avoid dementia?
So the big categories of lifestyle areas that are directly impactful on maintaining our health, reducing our risk of dementia, preventing dementia even, are physical exercise, and we can talk specifics about that, why it's worked, how much is necessary, and so forth. But physical exercise, diet, the foods that we eat, and the things we ingest into our body, mental stress management, and sleep. So those are the big 4, I would say, and we should talk about those. The physical exercise, when we exercise physically, and it can be nothing more than a brisk walk, 150 minutes of walking a week, so 5 days a week, 30-minute walk. Okay? 30-minute walk 5 days a week, people over 65 who've done that type of walking, we can see growth in the part of the brain where new learning takes place that reverses 2 years of aging. And that can happen within a couple of months. So when we exercise regularly, lots of things happen. One, the brain produces multiple proteins that causes and stimulates the brain to sprout new connections and make new neurons. So our neurons get healthier. 2, we improve vascularization to the brain, blood flow, so we get better nutrient, better oxygenation, better waste removal from the brain. 3, the muscles produce anti-inflammatory factors that reduce inflammation in our body, which not only helps our brain, but helps our entire body. Our metabolism improves. We actually tend to have better body weight profiles and less adipose on our body when we exercise regularly. And obesity is a factor that can accelerate dementia. And that's for a variety of reasons connected to all of these avenues. So physical exercise also improves insulin sensitivity. And insulin sensitivity, not just for the adult onset diabetes that everybody knows about, but in our brain, the brain makes its own insulin, and it's useful for a whole host of things, including removing certain waste products from the brain that contribute to Alzheimer's dementia, new memory formation, cognition, and so forth. And so when we get insulin resistance in the brain, it's one of the primary factors that contributes to the development of Alzheimer's dementia.
You know, one of the comments that you made that stuck with me, I have an app, a health app, that reminds me to stand every hour for 5 minutes. And cool. We talked about that standing elongates the cells of the brain, therefore helping them not shrivel up, not shrink, and is one of the dementia fighters, is the elongation of those cells of the brain.
Well, let me clarify what you're saying, because it's not quite the cells. The studies show that standing elongates the telomeres. Telomeres are the end caps on your chromosomes, and when cells reproduce, they make copies of the chromosomes, and as the telomeres shorten, the cells can't reproduce anymore, and that's one of the factors that accelerates aging is shortened telomeres. And so standing lengthens telomeres, slows the aging process.
Okay, and so we find that if people are sedentary, that this is causing a negative impact.
Right. And sedentary lifestyle. So that one study was just looking at telomeres. Standing, though, can have other benefits besides just the telomeres. That was that one study. And used the word lengthening, and that was what clued me in on that particular point. But sedentary lifestyle is also often associated with less general physical activity, and so less exercise in general. Also, many people in our Western society, when they're sedentary, they're often watching television. There's a relationship between sitting and watching TV, and television watching is associated with cognitive disengagement. In other words, you are typically not stimulated to think, to reason, to process, to learn. It is true, you can watch some learning programs, you can watch educational programs, but the majority of the TV programming is theatrical programming for entertainment purposes, and that type of programming does not stimulate new learning, and in fact activates stress circuits and can cause amygdala activation, increase inflammatory cascades in our body. So there's studies that show that television watching is associated, theatrical television, not educational, associated with inattention and attention deficit type symptoms.
We often confuse dementia and Alzheimer's, and they are distinct. Does one progress to the other? Does there have to be dementia before Alzheimer's?
So dementia is the syndrome of functional loss. To have dementia, you have to have memory impairment plus one of 4 other domain losses. So memory impairment plus language impairment or motor impairment where you can't button or tie shoes like you normally get, or cognitive impairment where you can't balance a checkbook, or you can't organize, you can't plan, or loss of ability to identify things by name. You can't name the chair, or simple things that you should know the names of, you don't know the names of anymore. Okay? Memory impairment with one of those other losses, that's the syndrome of functional loss called dementia. Anything which damages the brain can cause that functional loss. So if you have Parkinson's disease sufficient to damage enough of your brain, you can get Parkinson's dementia. If you have vascular disease with little tiny strokes happening in your brain, you can get vascular dementia. If you have Alzheimer's disease, which is a specific cascade of disease happening in the brain, that leads to Alzheimer's dementia and so on.
So in our understanding of the preventability, as we look at lifestyle being the single greatest contributor to the prevention of dementia, if we were to guess, or maybe you have a statistical analysis, those who applied the principles you've outlined in the aging brain of both lifestyle and diet, exercise, all those, brain stimulation, what are the percentage reductions that we can look at in being able to prevent dementia?
Well, the data would suggest that if you do the lifestyle factors, the late onset Alzheimer's dementia, which is, and we're talking Alzheimer's dementia specifically, we're not talking Parkinson's dementia or some of the other types, but the Alzheimer's, which, by the way, Alzheimer's dementia, late onset, is the largest type of dementia out there. It constitutes the largest number of people with dementia. If you do the lifestyle factors, the data shows you won't progress to Alzheimer's dementia, even if you have a family history of the late onset type. Now, there is a specific gene that has been associated with late onset Alzheimer's type dementia, and if you have 2 copies of that gene, it increases your risk of getting it 60%. One study at the University of Washington found that people with 2 copies of the bad gene had less of that toxic protein that's associated with Alzheimer's dementia in the brain and did not progress to dementia, even if they had 2 copies of the bad gene, if they had a history of exercise. So in that particular study, just the one modifiable factor of exercise prevented the increased risk that you get from having the 2 copies of the bad gene. In the book, we outline a whole host of modifiable factors, and the data actually shows that people who have mild cognitive changes are they haven't met criteria for dementia. They haven't had enough functional impairment that they had memory impairment with one of those 4 losses, but they're not quite as sharp as they used to be, and people can recognize that and measure that. If they do the changes, the lifestyle changes, those people, the studies show, don't progress on to dementia. So I think the evidence is very strong that if you make these lifestyle changes, you can avoid developing late onset Alzheimer's dementia. And the reason that seems to be the case is because we have some good insights now is what's probably happening in the brain is that the lifestyle, all the lifestyle factors that contribute to Alzheimer's dementia are causing inflammation. Inflammation is causing insulin resistance in the brain. And when we get insulin resistance in the brain, that causes a cellular cascade of loss. The lifestyle changes of regular exercise, anti-inflammatory diets, and so forth are resensitizing insulin receptors, and so you begin clearing the toxic proteins out of the brain and you stop that cascade of neuronal loss.
I think of the passage in Job where Job says, "That which I feared the most has come upon me." There are those that are obsessed with this idea of dementia, family members constantly looking, mom slipping, she can't remember where she placed her keys, she can't remember this. They seem to be this laser look into trying to examine this singular symptom or singular set of symptoms rather than looking at the whole picture of are we getting mom out for a walk? Are we getting her the proper nutrition? Are we helping her engage? Are we doing these things rather than looking at the symptoms?
No, I want to intervene and say something here because what you said is real important. You see a family member is starting to have some changes. Don't just ignore the changes. First thing you want to do is get them into their family doctor or primary care doctor and just get a good physical exam because sometimes those cognitive changes, memory problems, focus problems, making mistakes problems, could be related to something physical, like somebody's got a bad hypothyroidism that's not being treated, and they can look like they have dementia and they really don't have dementia. So you just want to get a good, severe anemia can look that way, and you treat that. Iron deficiency can look that way. So there's a lot of physical things. You want to go ahead and get a good physical, make sure there's nothing identifiable going on there. But then as what you're saying is also true. If it's early, it's just starting to notice those changes, and there's nothing specific like I've just mentioned that they can just treat directly, then doing all these lifestyle things, getting the healthy anti-inflammatory diet, and the two diets that have been associated with better brain volume and better cognitive performance are either the Mediterranean diet, which is high in omega-3 fish oils, or the plant-based diet. Both of those are directly associated with better physical health, lower reductions in diseases across the board, as well as low reduction in dementia. Do that stuff, walking, exercising, stress management, and then we'll talk about sleep here, I'm sure, in a minute, but sleep is critical as well.
Absolutely. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, who is going to be visiting with us over the next several months on a regular basis to talk about the aging brain. We'll probably revisit a little bit about the God-shaped heart, the God-shaped brain, and the overall view of biblical principles as they apply to good mental health, and mental health being a critical issue in America and throughout the world today as we look at the incidence of suicide, depression, anxiety disorders, all these things, many, many, many preventable by not just pharmacology, but through good counseling and good lifestyle changes. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to address that issue of sleep, which seems to afflict, I believe the number was 67 million Americans take some form of sleep aid or identify in some form of insomnia, and that is a leading contributor towards the degradation of the mental and physical health of our nation. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. Dr. Jennings, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Before we went to break, we brought up the word sleep. For some, it is a battleground. The bed is a battlefield. The turning off of the brain that you have so worked all day to stimulate, and you have worked so diligently to feed and to keep sharp and creative, just won't shut off. And people are turning to medications which are counterproductive to the prevention of some of these conditions that you've discussed. So it's almost a self-defeating cycle that people are in, where they're trying to avoid dementia, but they're taking medications which could contribute to dementia.
So let's talk about sleep first. There are 4 physical requirements to life: air, water, food, and sleep. Everybody knows the first 3. You'd be surprised how many people don't realize sleep is a physiological requirement to life and health. Now, the human brain is only 2 to 3% of your body mass or body weight, but it uses 20% of your body's energy, which means it's highly metabolic, burning up lots of fuel. And when you burn up fuel, there are waste products that are being produced, and those waste products have to be cleared because waste products become toxic if they build up. It's during sleep that your neurons physically contract and expel out of the inside of the neuron, out of the neuron into the cerebral spinal fluid, those waste products to be cleared out of your brain. If you don't get adequate amounts of sleep across the landscape of your life, it's not an occasional night because you've been traveling or something, but on the landscape of your life, if you have a chronic sleep deprivation, then you don't clear these waste products, then they build up and they increase your risk of dementia. That's the first thing people need to understand. And normal sleep for an adult is 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. But what is normal sleep? And most of my patients don't know what normal sleep is. Many people think that normal sleep is you go to bed at a certain time, you fall asleep, you sleep for 7 to 8 hours, and then you wake up. That's not normal sleep. Normal sleep, you enter light stage sleep. Light stage sleep's like a Thanksgiving afternoon, grandma's snoring on the couch. You go, Grandma, you're snoring. I wasn't even asleep yet. Okay, you don't even think you're asleep, but you're just entering light stage. We go stage 2, followed by a deep, slow wave sleep. That's where your heart rate slows down, your body temperature falls. That's followed by REM, rapid eye movement sleep, where you do your dreaming, and then you wake up. And then stage 1, 2, deep sleep, REM, wake up, stage 1, all night long. From the time you enter stage 1 until the time you wake up at the end of a REM cycle is anywhere between 70 and 120 minutes. So if you're waking up a little over an hour to every 2 hours through the night, as long as you're able to get back to sleep within 10, 15 minutes, that's normal. That's normal sleep. What happens when we're young is those wake-up periods may only be 5 seconds. We just wake up enough, we shift, we turn in the bed, we fall right back to sleep, and we have amnesia for that 5-second wake-up, and so we think we slept solidly through the night, even though if we're doing an EEG on the brain, they're awake right there, okay? When we get older, we wake up and we get a bladder call, bathroom, And then we remember waking up and people start thinking, oh, I'm not sleeping good anymore. And then they start stressing and worrying about the fact they think they're not sleeping. And then they start taking medications. And what you mentioned a moment ago, most of the medications prescribed for people to sleep, like the benzodiazepine families of medications, the Ambiens, the Lunestas, the Xanaxes, the Klonopins, and that family of medicines, interfere with normal sleep architecture, interfere with memory consolidation, and can contribute to, at least in the there have been 9 studies looking at the relationship between those medicines and dementia. 7 out of the 9 studies showed a positive relationship. Those medicines increasing your risk of dementia. 1 study showed no relationship, and 1 study showed a negative relationship. So the preponderance of the evidence is that they're putting you at risk for dementia. So you need 5 of those sleep cycles a night, REM cycles, which is about 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night for an adult. So if you're waking up, as long as it's on your own, naturally, not somebody rousting you out of the middle of a sleep cycle. If you get woken up in the middle of a cycle repetitively, that's not healthy. But as long as it's a natural wake up at the end of a REM cycle, there's no need to medicate that.
That's interesting. We have a program, Winning the Battle for the Night, where we have a sleep expert on with us on the first Wednesday of every month. The last Monday of every month, about winning the battle for the night, because sleep is so important, and it's a meeting place for God. It is a place where we go into this amazing unconscious state where so many things are happening simultaneously for the health and wellness, and it actually fulfills Scripture in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that says anyone who's a Messiah is a new creation. So I went to bed last night. I had these cells, these hairs, these electrons, these things, and over the course of that 8 hours of sleep, I've sloughed off dead skin, I've grown new skin. I've sloughed off certain hair, I've grown new hairs. I'm not the same person. If I were to take a complete metabolic breakdown and chemical breakdown of my exact chemistry and exact number of hairs and number of cells and number, it would be different 8 hours later. I would not be the same person. Is that correct?
Sure. But that's also from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. That's true too.
Yes. We're constantly evolving, constantly changing. So when we look at this and we say, okay, I want to make changes. I want to do these things. Dr. John Trent says that most of things to change and make this long list, and they never get to that long list of things to change. But if you'll change 1 or 2 things at a time, you have a much broader, much better opportunity or chance to succeed by changing 1 thing and then sticking with that for a while, making that a part of your lifestyle and changing another thing. So if in the order of importance of things that I can begin to implement as I chart out my pathway to a lifestyle which is going to defy dementia, it is going to protect me from dementia and bring healing to whatever it is that I've done in the past, because it is, as you have pointed out, reversible. We don't have to get to that point of no return. We can come to almost that point, but there are things that you have stated in your book, in our conversations, that can pull us back from that brink and repair.
Yes. So you're asking what things do you start with first?
Yes.
Okay. So if you had to prioritize the most important things, I think number 1 would be things you want to remove, things that are actually causing injury or toxicity. So if you are a drug user, a heavy alcohol user, those kinds of things, removing the stuff, because it really doesn't matter if you are going to go out and exercise every day, if you're actually killing neurons by the millions by toxic stuff you're putting in. So remove toxins first. Secondly, then all the things that are required for health. So you want to do the sleep. Get yourself on a good sleep routine and sleep regimen. So you go to sleep within a 60-minute window and wake up within a 60-minute window every day, pretty much, except maybe when you're traveling into different time zones, then there's always a little adjustment there. But you just have a habit. That's your habit. That's it. And people who do that are the healthiest people. And then once you have that habit, this is where John Trent was telling you about change. When you make a change, it takes focus and energy to initiate and think about something you're not used to doing. So it takes effort. You only have so much energy or effort to spend on anything. And if you try to do too much, you're overwhelmed. So you pick one thing. But once you've done that one thing repetitively for about 3 months, that becomes habituated, becomes wired into your brain, and it no longer takes that initiated effort. That's your automated stuff that you do without effort now. That's your habit. And so now you can then step up and add another one for the next 3 months and make a new change, and that becomes wired in and habit. So I think sleep would be a good one. And a couple of these you could really do simultaneously. Hydration, drinking water, moving away from sodas. I will tell you, if something simple to do is take all sodas out of your diet, especially if they're routine. Oh, if you have a soda once or twice a year, it's not going to be much of a deal. But if you have soda every day, that absolutely accelerates aging, contributes to bone mass loss, increases your risk of dementia. So removing sodas and simply going to water and stabilizing your sleep, that's pretty simple changes right there, but can have huge dividends on you. And then as we go through other dietary elements, you can bring in one at a time until they become habituated. But I would start with those things. Adding, and then the next thing would be exercise. Add some exercise in. Very good. And it could be simple exercise. One of the keys on exercise we didn't talk about earlier, it needs to be something you enjoy. If you do an exercise and in your mind, your mental experience of it is, I hate this. This is miserable. Oh, and you're just slogging through it by a force of will, but the whole time it's like torture to you. That actually activates stress circuits in your brain, kicking up inflammatory cascades, and it works against the benefit of the exercise. And the studies show you don't get the same positive cholesterol changes and other things than if you do an exercise that you enjoy.
So when we take a look at stressors, cortisol, the release of cortisol in the system, the things that we look at that cause excess weight gain, that cause stressors in our body, and changes in dietary habits, we begin to crave things that are not beneficial for us. When we look at simple carbohydrates that contribute to sugar levels, that contribute to energy boosts, that then turns that into a negative physiological experience. There's great wisdom in the teaching of the Bible of what to eat and the foods that are healthy for you, although Paul says all things are lawful, not all things are beneficial. So I believe you and I talked about tuna and wild-caught salmon as being staples in our own diet, as being the two real, for me, protein sources that I have. I think we compared notes on that, and we're kind of in agreement on the wild-caught salmon and the tuna. The
science actually supports that very much so. The people that have the highest amount of omega-3 from fish sources, like the oily fish, like tuna, mackerel, salmon, the wild salmon, have better brain volume and have less dementia. And it actually, I think it reduces the dementia risk about 56%, something along those, don't quote me exactly, but a substantial reduction in dementia risk for having salmon or oily fish once or twice a week.
Now, what about omega-3 supplements?
So the data is not as robust. You have a more robust outcome from getting it directly from eating the fish than you do from getting the supplements, but the data would still support that there's benefit from omega-3 fatty acids in the diet. The DHA EPA long chain form, which comes from marine sources, and you potentially could get that from an algae source, but it's not coming from nuts or flax. That's the short chain form, and your body converts very little of that to the form the brain needs.
So if I were to take a look at a weekly diet plan, a weekly food intake plan, I would make sure to include a minimum of 2 servings, full servings of high in omega-3 fatty acid items such as salmon, mackerel, tuna, but wild-caught salmon
Sure.
not farm-raised salmon. And what about vegetables? Do they play any contributing part in the aging brain?
Yes. Oh, yes. Foods with color. So foods with colors. So your green leafy vegetables, your yellow vegetables, carrots, your fruits, all the berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, all the berries, foods with colors like that, high in phytochemicals, high antioxidant, which are anti-inflammatory and are associated with better longevity, reduction of inflammation in the body, high blood pressure, heart disease, all of these types of things, as well as dementia risk, all improve when we eat a plant-based diet. Cancer risk go down, all of it. Now, one particular food, pomegranate, and pomegranate juice, high in polyphenols, have been in multiple studies show the clear amyloid, which is the protein associated with dementia. It helps clear that out of the brain, as well as reducing inflammation. And so that's associated with a very positive. So I recommend people drink 1 glass of 100% pomegranate juice a day.
Interesting. Interesting. Is there any correlation between cooking a vegetable and raw vegetable consumption?
So the data would support, and science would support, that the healthiest for most, we're talking in general now, there might be some exceptions in certain types of vegetable, but most of them you're going to be healthier and the more raw they are. The more you cook them, you can denature some of these things in general. Sometimes some vitamins can be released or improved by boiling or cooking. But when we and there's data to support that microwaving foods can actually damage or denature some of the like vitamins that are in the food, so it might not be as nutritious for us to microwave the food, whereas boiling them would be better. So the more close they are to their natural form, generally, the healthier they are for us.
As we look at lifestyle changes, you have a practice, you're a practicing psychiatrist. You have people who come in with chronic conditions or even temporary, possibly chronic conditions where they're dealing with issues. And in your holistic view, your holistic approach of brain stimulation, I don't know if you use EMDR in your practice or not, but certainly familiar with the process. When you write a prescription, even though you are a psychopharmacologist with the ability to prescribe the full spectrum of every kind of medication, when you write a prescription, is your prescription more complex? Is there a lifestyle sheet? Is there a food sheet? Is there more than just the little 4x4 square that we're used to seeing, which is the prescription off the pad?
Right. So my approach to my patients is it always starts with diagnosis. Diagnosis first, because if your diagnosis is wrong, then your treatment is usually wrong. One of the problems with modern psychiatry is that as beneficial as what's known as the DSM has been, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Illnesses, has been, it has lent itself to a checklist approach to diagnoses. If you have this symptom or this many constellation of symptoms, you get this diagnosis. Well, you can have a checklist symptom and meet the checklist criteria and still not know what's wrong with the patient, and that's problematic. That approach leads to pigeonholing people and then pharmaceutical interventions, which are very, very minimalistic. Once you know a person, say, has depression, let's say they meet the criteria for major depression, you still don't know why they have major depression. And there is a whole host of contributing factors. A person can have major depression because they have severe hypothyroidism. Sometimes people have major depression because they have an undisclosed carcinoma. They can have depression because they have untreated sleep apnea. They can have depression because they're in a marriage in which they're getting beaten 3 times a week by their spouse. They have depression because they have severe nutritional deficiencies because they eat nothing but junk food, et cetera, et cetera. Or they have depression because they're cheating on their spouse and overcome with guilt and they're not resolving that and putting their life right. Lots of reasons. So once I diagnose whatever their syndrome is, then I, in my mind, begin saying, okay, what are the contributing factors in this person's life that have brought them with this constellation of symptoms that's causing a functional impairment? And then the treatment plan, as you say, I give them a list of things to try to hit every one of those contributing factors that we can hit. So nutritional wise, let's look at their lifestyle. Are they eating well? Are they exercising? They got good sleep hygiene. We look at that. Are there relationship issues? Are there spiritual, unresolved guilt issues that they need to come to peace with the Lord on? Where are they out of balance? Is God designed life to work? And how can we move them towards harmony? So this principle, doctors can never get patients well in violation of the laws of health. And the laws of health, as I understand them, are not just physical laws. Those are the laws upon which our minds are constructed and our relationships are built by God to operate on. And if you're violating those design laws, you will also have health and mental health problems. And so our goal is to always be moving people back into harmony with God's design for life and health.
To summate that, we have to strike a balance in all areas of our life to lead a balanced life. And if we have a balanced life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, body, mind, and spirit in balance, then we're making decisions logically with information at hand that's going to help us age well, help us deal with life's challenges well. The spiritual component is incredibly important in this whole process, this relationship with God and a foundation of faith in His Word, because many of the things that you've talked about are all contained in the Word. A man who does not work does not deserve to eat, so you've got to get out there and do something. There's we can find a scripture to back up every single statement that you've made. There is scriptural evidence and support for that. And as I embrace what is considered to be, to me, quite comical, my geriatric years, I find that to be just absolutely hilarious. I laugh at that. I'm 67. And, I think that I'm 17, but I read 3 books a day. I interview 3 authors a day. I teach classes at night on completely different subjects than what I've interviewed. So I have this constant stimulation of the brain that's going on, which I know keeps me alert, keeps me sharp, keeps me embracing new ideas. Positions that I held 7 years ago, I no longer hold. Even in regards to Scripture. It's because my brain is involved, my understanding is evolved, and I'm willing to go on television and say, no, I no longer have that same position that I espoused 3 years ago.
And that's really mature. That's really mature, to be able to grow and advance in one's understanding. That takes real maturity to do that. That's the biblical definition of maturity. To be able, God is infinite, we're finite. And we will never stop advancing in our relationship with God for all eternity future, because we'll never become God. We'll always be growing in our insights and our wisdom. So I love to hear you say that.
Well, it's humbling, but it is so exciting to have fresh new manna and to come to an expectation that God is going to provide. And He says, behold, can you not perceive it? I am doing a new thing. And that's what He wants for us in this season, is for us to be healthy, believing in this temple of God, offering our bodies as a living sacrifice, and that includes our mind, which is an essential part of our body functionality. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. Also the author of The God-Shaped Heart and The God-Shaped Brain. You can find him at agingbrainbook.com or his ministry website, comeandreason.com. We look forward to seeing you back here next month for another visit, and we thank you so much for being a part of Revealing the Truth.
Thanks for having me.
God bless you, my friend. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.